from some American citizens, protesters swarming as agents make arrests, the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE officer. This past week, we went to Minneapolis and spoke with two men at the center of the crisis, the chief of police and the head of ICE's deportation operation, both veteran law enforcement officers with two very different views of what is unfolding. Tonight, there were 3,000 ICE and Border Patrol agents in the Minneapolis area. That's nearly 5 times the number of police on the city's force, making it the largest ever deployment of federal immigration officers to an American city. 1 week after an ICE officer shot Renee Good, this was the scene on the streets of Minneapolis. Federal immigration agents facing off against angry protesters. It is exactly what Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara feared. He's been tasked with rebuilding trust between the community and police in the wake of George Floyd's murder nearly 6 years ago.
We're in this 2020 moment where all these tensions have been building. And I'm afraid we're going to have another moment where it all explodes.
Late Wednesday night, we witnessed the anger ourselves.
It's not a good place to be, bro. Get out of here!
Leave! Leave! Go home! Leave!
We are just hours after meeting with the police chief here in Minneapolis, where he told us that tensions were so high he was worried that violence would take place, something else would happen in this community. You can hear flashbangs behind me. We are now just a few blocks away from where federal immigration agents have been involved in another shooting here in Minneapolis. ICE says one of its officers shot a Venezuelan man in the leg after he and 2 other migrants attacked the officer with a snow shovel and broom handle. ICE says the 3 men are in the country illegally. The Trump administration says the goal is to crack down on illegal immigration and weed out fraud. They call it Operation Metro Surge. Elected officials in Minneapolis call it an occupation. Administration officials are adamant that this action that they're undertaking in Minneapolis right now is making this city safer.
Targeted, precise, pre-planned operations on violent offenders, that is a good thing. But I'm concerned that people in the administration don't actually understand the reality of what's happening on the street.
Chief O'Hara told us the city's 911 system is overwhelmed by.
This is why I don't trust this dude, because he's telling the administration that he's concerned that they don't know what's happening on the street when they have literally federal agents, ICE agents on the street. You got Kristi Noem, who's head of Homeland Security. Obviously, if they didn't, how would they not know what's going on? If they didn't know what's going on, then how would they know where to go in the city? Obviously, they had to tour the city, be aware of the surroundings to be able to get the illegal immigrants out. So this is what I mean. This guy will play in your face. He's a chameleon. He rides the fence because 1 minute he's saying this administration doesn't understand what's going on. As in the Trump administration, he stands right next to Mayor Jacob Frey, sitting there talking about, oh, well, Renee Good, she died and she got killed, and this is blood on the hands of the Trump administration. When obviously in the same sentence, this man is sit in your face and say an obstruction of an ICE operation is illegal. But the very individual that he's defending obviously was not only being an agent of chaos, but obviously impeding on a criminal investigation, let alone ICE operation, however you want to put it. But you get where I'm going there. So obviously, to be an agent of chaos, you're obviously in a state of obstruction, because you're being a hurdle. In this case, Renee Good blocked her car in regards for the ICE agents not to come around or to leave, because she called herself being this noble individual where she's informing the community that ICE is in the community so she can help and aid illegals to get away. But this the same guy that will sit here and say an obstruction of an operation is illegal, but she did the very thing that he is saying in the same sentence that should be defended when it comes to her killing. So defend the killing, but then say the action she took was illegal at the same time. Well, what the fuck one is it?
by complaints about immigration enforcement. What are you seeing?
Seeing multiple calls of people who have been subjected to tear gas, pepper spray. At least one case, a person was removed from a vehicle and the car wasn't even placed in park and it was rolling down the roadway.
In an ideal world, it is a city on edge. And as we walked with
This one person was dragged out the car wasn't in park, and it was rolling down the runway. Well, if you actually cooperated with ICE agents and stop being a sanctuary city, meaning that you're not going to operate or cooperate with federal law enforcement working hand in hand, you won't let them in your jails. So obviously they got to go out in the streets and play hide and go seek to get these illegals who barricade themselves into homes and driving in vehicles they have no damn business driving, because obviously they're illegal. So they can't have registration, they can't have license, they don't got a social security number. So obviously he's deflecting, because the very thing of him being a law enforcement chief in regards to the city of Minneapolis, he can't be doing his job, because why the fuck they in the car in the first place if they're illegal, and they should never came in the country in the first place because they're illegal immigrant. This is what I mean with this guy. This is common sense stuff, right? But let him continue to talk about the 911 system, because I really want to touch on that. That's the whole point of me doing this video. Give this video a big thumbs up if you're rocking with me. I appreciate you for rocking with me. You're getting value from this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let's continue.
the chief, we heard it from a man in a passing car.
How dare you let this happen here? You should be ashamed. You should be sick. Pig.
What do you want someone like that who just yelled at you and said you let this happen to know?
Well, I have been very publicly saying this has been a risk for several weeks, trying to get anyone in a position of authority to understand that tragedy was imminent.
The fatal shooting of Renee Good by ICE officer Jonathan Ross has become a kind of Rorschach test. Some see a senseless killing. Others see an officer defending his life.
I've seen the videos, and it's not clear to me why he appears to be in the path of the vehicle more than once. When you approach someone,
He doesn't understand, as a professional, he likes to call himself, being a chief police officer, why the federal officer, in this case the ICE agent, was standing in the middle of her vehicle multiple times. What does that have to do with her trying to run him over? Obviously, they're trying to contain the car, because common sense says when law and order is being enforced and you have someone who is in a, 15-ton vehicle, you obviously want to circle around it. You want to contain it as well, so you don't let the violent. Let's say I'll give you a simple example. If someone is a criminal, right, and they have a weapon, obviously, and they're barricaded into a home, what usually happens? ICE agents are going to circle around the home and they're going to close them in. You want to keep the violence from not spreading like wildfire, so you want to contain it so you can then neutralize it with your weapon, which means obviously they have a weapon, so you have to meet force with force. But there's a hierarchy, because the law enforcement agent has to have more force, which means more officers, which means bigger weapons, to obviously terminate or hopefully neutralize the situation so it don't hurt other individuals in the community. So why would you sit there and say, why is the officer in front of the vehicle multiple times when they're obviously instructing her and putting her hands there? He act like he never seen police officers when it came to a permitted construction site where they were obviously conducting traffic and telling people, you can go, you stop, you wait. They stand in front of fucking cars all day. And 90% of police officers die, no matter what form of law enforcement, from state, from federal, from local. They die 90% of the time from local traffic stops, because people refuse. They have their hand in the car. People not complying. They trying to stop them. They trying to neutralize the situation. It happens. Plenty of times they get dragged while the person is pulling off in the car. So if he's standing in front of the car and there's two ICE officers on the driver's side where she's about to pull off at, she's the driver, Renee Good, and they're telling her to turn off the vehicle, put it in park, do not drive off, get out the car, remove yourself from the vehicle, and she's not complying, And then she turned around and just hit the gas. And he's sitting in front of the vehicle like, listen, ma'am, hand up. Don't move. Whatever you do, don't move. They do it all the time. They have to circle in on the target, obviously to neutralize it so it doesn't spread like wildfire, so it don't hurt other individuals. Right? And you would think he would know this. I mean, I'm not a fucking cop, but it's just common sense.
Someone in a vehicle in a law enforcement encounter. There's very basic steps you take to ensure the officer's safety and to de-escalate the situation.
But the day after the shooting,
Exactly. But my thing is, how do you de-escalate a situation when in this case she has a 15-ton vehicle? How do you de-escalate a situation when someone has a weapon and obviously they're not looking to retreat or concede or put the weapon down? So what you supposed to do? How you supposed to de-escalate that? Unfortunately, tragedies happen. Didn't he say that in the beginning of the video? Sometimes you got to terminate the shit. Unfortunately. Some people in their mind, because you have demonic people out here. That's why I say it's a mindset thing and it's spiritual warfare. It's not a race war. It's a mentality thing. They're going to say, I'm not going outside. You're going to have to kill me. Unfortunately, there's some people with that mindset. They're not going out like a chump. They believe it's honorable to sit there and say, you're going to have to really just get rid of me. And they're not going to put the gun down. So how do you de-escalate that? In this case, a 15-ton vehicle. You don't de-escalate that if obviously C accelerated to escalate the situation. They're trying to contain. That's why the ICE agent was in front of the vehicle. I mean, am I speaking common sense here or what?
Vice President J.D. Vance put the blame squarely on Renee Good.
Recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making.
Homeland Security officials have accused Good and her wife of, quote, stalking immigration agents and impeding their work.
I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Top federal prosecutors in Minnesota resigned in part, sources told CBS News, because they were told to investigate the actions of Renee Good and her wife rather than Officer Ross.
Shame!
State investigators were blocked from the investigation altogether. Can Americans trust what's coming out about the status of this investigation right now?
The rhetoric that's coming out from a lot of our politicians is to not trust us, which is very odd to me when a lot of Americans would rather believe what they see on TikTok compared to a government agency.
Real
We
life.
spoke to ICE's Marcos Charles, who oversees arrests and deportations nationwide, including Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis. Could you see why some Americans might think that what's happening on the streets of some of these cities leads them to see ICE as feeling emboldened right now?
I would tell those people or ask those people to become educated on what we do and how we do it and what our authorizations are and the laws in general.
Get out!
Videos of confrontations between protesters and immigration agents seem to go viral nearly every day.
They have a right to observe, record, and object to police activity.
Do they have a right to get in an agent's face and call them a Nazi?
People have a right to say disrespectful things. As a professional, I have an obligation not to take that personally and not to retaliate. However, they cannot physically obstruct law enforcement from performing a function.
This is what I mean with the word solid. She asked him, is it okay for a person to get into an officer's face and say nasty rhetoric to them? He's basically saying it's for me not to retaliate, tugging on your heartstrings. This is the game they play. Oh, well, it's not for me to sit there and retaliate because they said some negative things. People are going to say negative things all the time. But then he follow-ups and say that you're not supposed to obstruct. So I'm going to just rewind a little bit.
However, they cannot physically obstruct.
So they cannot physically obstruct, right? They cannot sit there and be a barrier or a block or an obstacle. So she asked him, is it okay if they get in your officer face and call him whatever horrible thing they want? Well, if that, I'm going to replay it because this is what I mean.
Agent's face and call them a Nazi?
People have a right to say disrespectful things.
They don't have a right to get in their face, though. Now you're provoking an officer, right? The officer don't know what that person gonna do. So you don't call that obstruction if they get in an officer face and blocking them from doing what they got to do. In this case, ICE agents impeding into a operation, a criminal operation to get illegals out the country. But see, he'll dance around that and say they can say as many nasty things as they want. It's not for me to retaliate as an officer, but it's illegal for you to obstruct. Just say it plain and simple. You cannot get an officer face and you cannot block them from doing their job. And you can say as many nasty things you want, but you better not stay in their face. It's illegal. What's so hard?
As a professional, I have an obligation not to take that personally and not to retaliate. However, they cannot physically obstruct law enforcement from performing a function. Those things are illegal.
This past week, the Department of Homeland Security adamant that this action that they're undertaking in Minneapolis right now is making this city safer.
Targeted, precise, pre-planned operations on violent offenders. That is a good thing. But I'm concerned that people in the administration don't actually understand the reality of what's happening on the street.
Chief O'Hara told us the city's 911 system is overwhelmed by complaints about immigration enforcement. What are you seeing?
Seeing multiple calls of people who have been subjected to tear gas, pepper spray. At least one case, a person was removed from a vehicle and the car wasn't even placed in park and it was rolling down the roadway.
Administration officials are adamant that this action.
What we're seeing out of Minneapolis right now should shake every American to their core, not because of ICE, but not because of some viral video, but because the city's entire emergency response system, 911, is being used as a political weapon. And not by enemies overseas, not by terrorists, but by activists right here at home who are being encouraged by their own leadership to treat federal law enforcement like the enemy. And if you think about that for a second, because you see this police chief of Minneapolis just admitted in national televised interview on 60 Minutes that 911 lines are being overwhelmed and not with real emergencies, not with actual crimes, but with complaints about ICE simply doing their job. That's like calling the fire department every time you see a fire truck because you don't like the way it looks. Meanwhile, someone's house is burning down the street and no help is coming. This isn't civil engagement. This is deliberate sabotage. And it's vandalism of the system meant to protect human life. And it's happening with the approval, the blessing, really, of people like Mayor Jacob Frey, who has made it crystal clear that he'll rather stand with open border activists than with law enforcement. And you can't run the city like this. You can't pretend to care about public safety and then cheer while emergency lines are jammed with politically motivated noise. And this is what happens when leaderships pick ideology over responsibility. And I don't think this chief of Minneapolis here, he's saying that the Trump administration doesn't understand. But I believe that let alone him being a chief and him working hand in hand, kissing Jacob Frey, the mayor butt of Minneapolis, I don't think they understand what Governor Tim Walz, the administration of Minneapolis, doesn't understand. Bad enough you as the chief of Minneapolis setting a bad example don't understand either. So the deflection has to stop, homie. And you need to get it together because you are cowardly with no backbone and no spine to the simple fact that you are not even upholding the oath in which you signed up for. How can you be a law enforcement agent, whether it's on a state or local level, and the simple fact is you not working with federal agencies when when it comes all down to it, it should be a brotherhood between law enforcement from state, local, and federal, right? Because at the end of the day, the change and the trade-off of resources that American taxpayers pay for to uphold the safety of the American taxpayer. And it's so disrespectful he can sit here and blame the Trump administration, who is actually trying to prioritize and make sure our tax dollars as American taxpayer is going where they're going. And he's sitting here getting paid off of American taxpayer dollars and doing the most anti-American thing ever. This is beyond me. It's dangerous, it's reckless, and it's going to cause cost lives. Because when a mayor turns 911 into a political protest hotline, let's be clear, because ICE is not the problem here. The problem is the intentional breakdown of law and order. The problem is city leaders kneecapping federal officers while pretending to be shocked when chaos erupts. Minneapolis is not a victim of federal overreach. It's a victim of local cowardice. And this man, so busy kissing Mayor Jacob Frey butt, that he got to be getting paid, and he's obviously in cahoots, and this is corruption altogether from a chief, because I'm not going to say it's all police officers in Minneapolis, because majority of police officers under this man's leadership, Brian O'Hara, the chief of Minneapolis, they got their hands tied. And I would advocate for those who want to do the right thing and work with their law enforcement brothers and sisters to honestly just leave there and work with ICE. But this is what happened when you vote for sanctuary cities. That's why you have to vote different. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Peace.